afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube and Chucky 2009, and today we are going to be attempting to MIG weld aluminum without a spool gun because what could go wrong? That's why. I know full well, and I'm completely aware that a lot of people feel that it's a worthwhile use of money to spend a lot of money to get spool guns for MIG welding aluminum. But I'm just going to not worry about that for now, and we're going to have us a grand old time. So basically, as you probably know, this is just a normal MIG gun. I believe this has about a 10 or 12 foot reach. Actually, it's not a normal MIG gun, it's a flex head MIG gun. Basically, the way it works, you hook this end up to your welder, and wire starts feeding here, goes down the liner and out the end of the gun. And this is great, assuming the wire you're running is easy to push. Steel wire is not all that flexible, it's not all that soft compared to aluminum wire, so you can shove it through a 10-foot gun, no problems whatsoever. However, when some people try that with aluminum wire, because aluminum's much softer, when they try to push it at that substantially large distance compared to a spool gun, it doesn't work. It's like pushing rope uphill. So I've been told, but we're going to find out what exactly happens. Now, pretty much the most common way to MIG weld aluminum is to use what's known as a spool gun. As you can see, well, this is a spool gun here, of course, and I could use it, but it's going to take me like 5 minutes to hook this up to the welder, and ain't nobody got time for that. So, how this thing works, we'll just pop it open, you set your spool of aluminum in here, and you feed it out the end of the gun, and it's only traveling like 8 or 10 inches, so it's not going the 10 feet that MIG gun is, or 12 feet or whatever, thus it doesn't really have a chance to get majorly screwed up by, being pushed uphill like a piece of rope, so to speak. This is the way to go. So pretty much all I'm going to do is take this here spool of aluminium and stick it in the Hobart 187. We're going to try and feed it, and we're going to see what exactly, how well this works. Now, there are two main issues that I'm concerned with. First is the obvious feeding issues, of which I mentioned. Second is that this MIG gun that I have, this HG3 flex head, has been used extensively to weld steel. I've put, at least a fair amount of wire through it. I guess not all that much, I have the bigger welder. But this is a very nice gun, and it's performed beautifully for me. However, because I've fed steel wire through the liner, which is, I believe, also steel, looks to be steel, we might have some contamination issues with crap rubbing out of the liner and rubbing onto the wire. Let's go fire up the Hobart. Now let's have a look at this fine door chart. The door chart is one of the things that I really like about this welder. This is a very nice chart, and it covers flux core, your generic flux core wire, solid MIG wire, more solid MIG wire. Oh, well yeah, that's two different gas mixtures. Alright, stainless steel and aluminium, as some folks call it. We're going to set the polarity to DC electrode positive, same as steel MIG wire. And we're going to run 100% argon. I'll just borrow the bottle off my nice precision TIG. And we got some 30,000ths inch wire. This is going to be interesting, but let's see what this machine says about welding aluminum without the use of a spool gun. Aluminum wire is soft, so feedability is not as good. Make sure that hub tension is not too tight, and keep the torch as straight as possible. A push angle for the torch is recommended. Awesome! Alright, well, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the welder up on the workbench, and then we're going to point it in as straight of a line as we can, and we're going to weld on this little table here. I don't understand why it's such a mess in here. I just cleaned my shop like a year and a half ago. So the smaller spool fit in a lot easier than I thought it would, and normally I just max this out to feed it through the gun, but I'm not. I'm only going to set it to like 50. And our first real challenge is going to be feeding that wire out the end of our gun. That's the first something we're going to have, the first hurdle we're going to, something or other, I don't really know. But anyway. Alright, if we see a large amount of silver wire spewing out the side of the machine, we did something wrong. Oh shoot, we made it this far, YouTube! Yeehaw! Alright, well, let's put this MIG gun back together. Yeah, feedability is the name of this game, YouTube. Doesn't sound like a very fun game now, does it? What could go wrong? Let's give it a shot. Wow, that is soft wire. So it appears as though there's at least a chance this is going to work out, YouTube, which is pretty exciting. So the next thing we're going to need are some scraps of aluminum, such as these. Alright, I'm going to get some acetone and a stainless steel wire brush, and we're going to clean these things up. Well, that's a problem. Alright, so I've prepared some samples for us to mess around on, and I guess we'll start off with these 11 gauge ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. Alright, let's see. 11 gauge, all the way down, 30 thousandths wire, voltage 6, wire feed, it's 90. Okay. Alright, we're already on 6, and I'll crank this up. We're going to almost have this welder maxed out on 11 gauge material. The thing about aluminum, it conducts electricity very well and heat very well, so it takes a few more amps to weld the stuff. So alright, let's try this out and see what happens. Alright, so I'm going to try to hold this MIG gun as straight as possible coming from the machine. And, okay, what could go right? We got a weld. We also destroyed a tip. Where are my side cutters? And even under as ideal of circumstances as I could provide, we got us a nice bird's nest. Now basically what happens here is you know, you're feeding the wire down, the wire suddenly stops, it backs up, and it just bundles up like that and spits out, creating what's known as a bird's nest. Well, at least we got one tack weld done. Alright, so now I'm awkwardly positioning myself. I have removed the bird's nest, and we have officially destroyed more wire than we've run. Alright, so after all that hard work, it's time for another attempt at a tack weld. But we did that time. Alright, let's have a look at what exactly we've accomplished. So that's our first tack weld. As you can see, we had a lot of contamination there. So I figured at least some of that might be caused by not enough shielding gas, so I bumped it up from 20 cubic feet an hour to 30 for the second one. I also loosened the tension on our drive rollers some to hopefully help out at the machine. So now that I have this tacked up, I think it's time to attempt to run our first weld. We got a weld, YouTube! With a lot of contamination, but a weld nonetheless. Yeah, there she be, everybody. You know, I cleaned this metal off pretty well. I wire brushed it, acetoned it, did everything you're supposed to do. So I'm thinking that that contamination might be coming from the liner. Like I said before, I was afraid that could potentially cause some issues, and you know, with all the steel that's run through the liner, I'm afraid it might be like you know, using a steel wire brush, like a regular steel one on some aluminum. You know, you get bits of carbon steel on there and everything just sort of goes to pot after that. Let's do the other side. Well, that's the finished product. That's what we're up against. As you can see, that's just a lot of contamination. I know we're getting plenty of gas. I know the base metal was good and clean. I'm gonna guess that crap is probably coming from the inside of the liner, but I'm not really an expert at this, so that's nothing more than a guess. One thing I will say, however, is that I've learned that if you really attempt to, you know, yank it back and lengthen your stick out at the very last second before you let off the trigger, then you're not as likely to destroy tips. Although I forgot to do that and just roasted another one. But anyway, let's continue, I guess. I mean, I got the aluminum. Well, but that's another weld, YouTube. Yeah, we still have some pretty horrendous contamination, and I can't really figure out where it's coming from. We know the wire's clean, we know the base metal's clean, so it's got to be happening between wire and base metal. But that's pretty epic, I'll be honest. Okay, so we found that if you can hold this thing perfectly straight, it will feed in a way. Let's try and run it up like this and see what happens. Alright, that seemed to feed out okay. What about if we put a sharper angle in our liner, like that? How sharp can we take it? This is pretty sharp, YouTube. Alright, so I had this thing pretty much kinked over itself before it started to feel like it was slowing down, and that's as far as I think I want to push it. Let's snip this wire off. If I was ever going to have any use for this spool, I probably wouldn't just be cutting it off, I'd probably be backing it back up. So, alright. Well, we've just found out that you can actually get away with a fair amount, you know, liner-wise before you have issues. As y'all saw, I had the thing like this, and then I was kind of squeezing down on it, and then it started to slow down. But we didn't have a bird's nest from that. But if it sticks to your tip, whatever you do, don't pull the trigger. I've done that twice and gotten 2 bird's nests. Don't recommend that at all. So YouTube, we just found out exactly how far we can bend that MIG gun before we start having any kind of feeding issues. And to be perfectly honest, that was a heck of a lot more than I thought we were going to be able to get away with. When I was first thinking about making this video and I was looking through forum posts of people who've tried this, I expected to just have bird's nest after bird's nest after bird's nest after bird's nest. And really the only ones I had were brought on by myself, you know, giving that trigger a nice quick pull with a stuck tip, you know, like I mentioned. But it does not take much under those circumstances. But I guess as long as the wire can move, the wire will move. And, you know, I think I can wrap up the test because although I'm not getting the results I want, the results I am getting are pretty consistent. You know, they all look something like that. Or like that. The welds themselves, they're not good, but at the same time, they're not all that bad. I mean, they are, like I said, they are consistent. And with a little bit of fine-tuning on the machine and a little bit of practice on my part, we could have the welds themselves be fine. It's just the contamination we're getting. And you know, the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty sure it just has to be coming from either these drive rolls. I believe these are some kind of steel or machined, you know, cast or something. And you know, I'm sure there's plenty of little bits of steel wire on those from all the spools and spools and spools of MIG wire I've fed through this thing. And then we have the steel liner. And I'm sure that's not helping, and there's a lot of bits of steel in the steel liner, so I'm fairly certain that's what we're seeing, you know, coming out on this end contamination-wise. But what have we learned from this, you ask? Well, if you can get rid of this contamination, this might not be that bad of a way to go, you know? Like I said, it's like some welders, some machines I've had. Do they technically work? Yes. Is it still something of a flustercluck? Yes. Is it technically welded? Yes. Is this good? No, it is not. I don't really consider these welds to be acceptable. But considering the circumstances and the fact that this fed a lot better than I ever thought it would, I guess I can wrap this up. So where I'm going with this is if you can find some way to get rid of the contamination, maybe get like a Teflon liner or something. I've heard of those, I don't really know anything about them. Or, you know, do that and really clean the crap out of these drive rolls. I wish I'd taken these out and scrubbed them down with acetone, because just running my finger around here, you know, there's little bits of steel and grease and whatnot on there, and I'm sure that's not helping our cause any. So, you know what, if you can find a way to get rid of the contamination, this might actually work that well. I don't really recommend it, but if you just want to play around with it, or you have the occasional really small job and it's really occasional, it might be worth a shot. So anyway, I hope this answers everyone's question of what happens when you try to MIG weld aluminum without a spool gun. And, you know, to be fair, this turned out a lot better than my attempts at stick welding aluminum. That was a much bigger disaster. But as always, YouTube, thanks for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe for more. I haven't had any serious feeding.